What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out the brand new Punk archetype that just got revealed in the upcoming Deck Builders Booster Set, Grand Creators. This is a very interesting archetype, and I'm liking the design of it so far. I think that whoever designed Prankids probably designed this archetype. It's very reminiscent of Prankids, just all the bright colors and the beautiful aesthetics. Also, this is an archetype with multiple mechanics, and you're going to summon one mechanic and lead into the other one. Reminds me very much of like Prankids. A lot of disruption during the opponent's turn as well. And this archetype is psychic based, and it feels kind of retro psychic, very similar to when psychics first came out during the beginning of 5Ds, and all the monsters had like effects that tied with life points, whether it was gaining life points or it was paying life points. Anyways, we'll go ahead and start breaking these guys down. I probably will abbreviate some of the names so I don't butcher them. So let's start with one of the level 3s, and I believe this entire archetype is Psychic and Earth. And the first card is Punk Shirak. This is a 1200 attack, 600 defense. Hard once per turns on basically all the effects that I'm going to read, so I'm not going to keep reading that. First effect says you can pay 600 life points. Get used to me reading that because it's tied into basically everything in this archetype. Pay 600 life points, fusion summon one Punk fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand and or field as fusion material. Second effect, during the opponent's turn, quick effect, you can pay 600 life points. Immediately after this effect resolves, synchro summon one Punk synchro monster. So that tells you right there that Punk have fusion and they also have synchro monsters, and I was just kind of happy with the fusion effect, not having to run poly or this deck not necessarily needing to have a fusion spell, but then you also get the synchro summon during your opponent's turn. That's very good when we get to the synchro, obviously you would expect. The next card is a searcher, and this deck has a whole lot of searchers. This is Punk Wagon. Punk Wagon is 900, 600. First effect, pay 600 life points, add one Punk spell card from your deck to your hand. Second effect, when a Punk monster you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, you can draw one card. That is such a lovely effect, basically to kind of get for free. If your opponent attacks this card, you can just summon it. If your opponent attacks it, yeah, it's going to die in battle, but at least you get to draw something. If your opponent tries to target any of your other Punk monsters with Impermanence or Divine Punishment or basically any targeting, there's a lot of targeting in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you just get to draw a card for free. So that's definitely really nice. And, summoning this card, pay 600 life points, go +1, get any of the spells. The next one gets the traps. This is Punk Spider, 900 and 600 defense. The first effect says you can pay 600 life points, add one Punk trap from your deck to your hand. Spoiler alert, the traps are very good in this archetype. It's just a couple of them, but there's some excellent disruptive cards. Second effect, when you activate a Punk card or a Punk card effect that targets a card on the field your opponent controls, quick effect, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, half its attack into the end of this turn. So this card works directly in conjunction with the trap cards because they both have targeting effects. Basically, if you're just targeting one of your opponent's guys, you get to cut a monster in half. It's just a nice little icing on the cake, basically. I think the two searchers, you're just using these cards for mainly their search effects. I think if you get the second effects, it's just kind of icing on the cake. Last searcher is Punk Seaman. This is 600, 600, and this one searches monsters. You can pay 600 life points, add one Punk monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself, so instant Stratos for the archetype. Second effect, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one Punk monster you control. It gains 600 attack. So obviously, this is a pretty good card, not just to normal summon and get that search, but if you want a fusion summon with it, that's not bad as well. Or, you could use it for like synchro material, and those monsters are going to be able to get a little more attack. And the synchro and the fusion already have good stat lines. The high level monster, because this deck does have some high levels as we start getting to the extra deck monsters. This is the main deck monster with the highest level. This is Punk Foxy Toon, 2300 attack and 2600 defense. Truth be told, this is the only one that I don't really love. First effect, you can tribute one Punk monster, special summon this card from your hand. Second effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. Send one card from your hand to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon a level 8 or lower Punk monster from your deck. Second effect, once per turn, when this card destroys a monster by battle, you can gain life points equal to that monster. It's equal to the attack of that monster. So, I guess the second effect is a utility effect. It basically can just search or summon any monster in the entire archetype from the deck. I just don't, it feels like a high cost. You have to get rid of this guy and you got to send another card from your hand. I mean, I guess if you're ahead or you need one specific card, I guess it can be worth it. It feels like a lot in my opinion, but maybe not so much because, you know, a lot of the other Punk level 3 monsters are +1s, but I don't know how many of like the level 8 you're going to run. Next up is the Fusion monster. So the Fusion monster is also a level 8, and this is Punk Carp Rising. It's a water fish monster, which is just kind of bizarre, to be honest, considering everything else is psychic. 1000 attack, 2600 defense. The materials are 2 Punk monsters, so anything in the archetype can summon this, which I love. The first effect says you can tribute this fusion summon card, special summon 2 level 8 or lower Punk monsters with different names from your hand or deck in defense position. Second effect, if this card is used as synchro material, you can target 1 Punk monster you control. This turn, it can attack twice during the battle phase. So basically, it's supposed to be a way of giving the synchro a ton of attack. But I like this card. It's essentially a very easy card to summon. And it's like a rescue rabbit basically for the archetype. And you can even get the level 8 from your deck and then pull out one of the level 3s, and then you can go into the synchro, which we're about to talk about next, which if you haven't put 2 and 2 together, the synchro is a level 11. So I think that this card is quite solid. Not going to do much damage with this card because it only has 1000 attack, and it's not really a card that's going to be on the field all that much. You're probably going to tribute it or you're going to synchro summon with it. So it's just like a stepping stool card. The synchro, the big daddy that's on the booster pack, is your Punk Amazing Dragon, 3000 attack, level 11 as I said earlier, 2800 defense. It's generic, but probably just going to be summoned in this deck. If this card is synchro summoned, you can target a number of cards your opponent controls up to the number of level 3 psychic monsters with different names in your hand, or excuse me, on your field and graveyard, return them to the hand. Second effect, target 1 Punk monster in the graveyard, except another copy of Dragon, special summon it. That second effect is crazy. Basically, this card just has a built-in Monster Reborn, which obviously makes using the fusion to summon it a lot better, because then you could just Monster Reborn the fusion back, which is super good. The first effect is also some pretty solid disruption. I like to think of this card as essentially like a Mistworm, basically. Maybe you get to bounce 1 to 3 cards on your opponent's side of the field. Obviously, the monsters that they summon or extra deck monsters, that is like super critical. And keep in mind that you know, you can synchro summon during your opponent's turn. So now that makes a lot more sense. I guess you could say this is kind of like the Battle Butler a little bit of this archetype. I mean, it's not quite as good because you can't just activate it at any time. It is on summon, but definitely really solid. I think the Monster Reborn effect on this card is like crazy good. To the spells, we have 2 spells and 2 traps each. The first spell is Punk Wild Picking, continuous spell card. They're both continuous for these spell cards. First effect says, at the start of the damage step, if your Punk monster is battling an opponent's monster, you can destroy that monster. Second effect, if this card in its owner's spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect for the rest of the turn. Punk monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. So I think that the first effect should be able to activate during both players' turns, which is very cool because it basically just turns all your Punk monsters into an Armatis, or at least once during that turn, which it's kind of nice. Like, this is one of those cards where if you use the Punk card that searches a spell, you search this, you attack into something, you just blow it up for free, and then during your opponent's turn, if they try to attack into one of your monsters, you just blow it up for free, because as far as I can tell, the first condition is met during either player's turn. So definitely a cool card. The next one is Punk Crusher Beat. This is also a continuous spell. First effect says, if your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Punk monster in your possession, you can target 1 card on the field, destroy it, or target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it. Second effect, if this card in the spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's effect, you can activate this effect for the rest of the turn. Punk monsters you control cannot be targeted by or destroyed by card effects. So that's kind of cool. I'm not necessarily certain if you need to run this card. It feels a little matchup dependent, and this is a card that you can't just immediately activate it and get some advantage. Like, you have to wait for your opponent to do something specific, which means obviously your opponent will do everything they can to try to play around it. It does feel like, you know, has a pretty decent upside where your opponent targets one of your cards, and no matter what, you just get to blow something up on their side of the field. However, if your opponent targets something and they don't have a card on the field, that could be a little bit of a problem. So I don't know if you need to run this card. The other one, I like the other one. Now, the trap cards, as I said before, are very solid in my opinion. The first one is Punk Dangerous Gabu. Normal trap, and you got a hard once per turn on both of the traps. Target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects for the rest of the turn. Then if you control a punk monster, gain life points equal to the targeted monster's original attack. So this is an impermanence for the archetype. However, it gets significantly better if you control a punk monster, then you get life points. Now, it's not quite like impermanence because you can't play it from the hand. However, in this archetype, it is a searchable card because you just pay 600 life points and then you get to add it to your hand for free. The next one, this is Punk Surprise, and this is another hard once per turn. Target one face down card your opponent controls, or if you have a punk monster, you can target a face up card your opponent controls, destroy it. I love this card. This is basically Infernity Break for the archetype. Now, you really need to have a punk monster on field to get the full Infernity Break because just, targeting a set card, like, that's not very good, honestly, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore. But getting being able to target a set or a face-up card, now it's just, basically just target any card. It basically just becomes Infernity Break, which is super solid. So I think both of the trap cards are very good for just kind of, disrupting your opponent. They're not like out of this world insane, negate and do all this other crazy stuff, but for solid, I think they're just solid disruptions. So I think this archetype is pretty cool. Whatever you guys think about the punk archetype, leave it in the comment section below. Loving the artwork, loving the colors. I'm loving Konami bringing back psychic monsters where, you got to pay some life points or revolving around life points. That's kind of cool.